Hey, what's up? It's Bon. Let's talk about game engines. So I've been talking about this video for a minute, um, and I just kind of want to discuss what's going on in the gaming industry right now. And I think there is a shift happening that may not seem like that big of a deal, but I think will be, especially in this generation of games. By generation of games, I'm referencing all of the games that are going to come out while the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles are the main consoles, and that will be up to when the PS6 releases, and if Xbox releases a next gen. I think that's a whole different discussion, but we'll get there. So, a game engine is a collection of tools. A game engine isn't really this like prolific, thing. It's not one thing. It's a bunch of tools that were created and they're all smashed together to make a video game. And it's ever changing, it's ever evolving, and any two devs may not even use the same engine the same way. They may modify it. So we've talked about that. So if you're paying attention to gaming news, you will know that there are a lot of games and developers switching to Unreal Engine 5, which is Epic's newest engine. Unreal 4 was, a very prolific engine as well as 3. And Unreal Engine 3 ran everything from like some of the old Gears of War games to all three Mass Effect trilogy games, and so on and so forth. So it may not be that surprising, and it's not really news that video games are switching to Unreal Engine 5, except that many of them are big AAA devs, or at least rumored to be, and all of them were already using proprietary engines or engines they made in-house. So I take you to a tweet that I made where I said, question to my various game dev mutuals, why do you think that so many studios are leaving the proprietary engines for Unreal Engine 5? Working on a video for next week, which was, this is late, sorry, and would like some expert takes. Respond to this tweet or DM me if you prefer. Thanks, retweets appreciated. And so what brought this up is that we know that CD Projekt Red is moving to Unreal Engine 5 for their next Witcher game, and probably for the next Cyberpunk game, which they've already announced is in some stage of development, probably pre-production. It's probably many years away, but that's a big deal because I think their engine was the Red engine, which they've used for all of their games, I believe. And with Cyberpunk, with that game's issues, it's still a very beautiful game and has a lot of good tech in it, but it seems like they did a calculation and figured out that it'll be easier to use Unreal, which is being developed by a whole different set of engineers and programmers, rather than investing in that themselves. We're also hearing rumors that 343 and Halo may move to Unreal Engine from their I forget what their engine's called. It's Star something, I think. There's a rumor that the next Mass Effect game at BioWare will be Unreal Engine 5, even though their game that is going to release in the next year or so, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, will still be on the Frostbite engine, which is what EA uses for a majority of their games. And so with all of that, I wanted to ask, because I have a decent number of game devs who follow me, and I also knew that some of them would retweet, and there's that whole chain of devs. So let's kind of look through some of these responses. I will say that there were I'll find them in here somewhere, but like one of the co-founders of BioWare responded. So stuff like that is why I asked, because I knew I would get some good answers. So the first answer here is, I recently had an interesting conversation with a publisher and several game dev studios under them, and they told me all of them have moved from Unity to Unreal. I had no time to ask why, but that's still a notable thing, right? So just so you kind of understand the major engines, the two biggest engines that are available for anyone to use is Unreal Engine, made by Epic, and Unity. Unity has kind of a weird reputation. It's much cheaper to use, so especially indie devs and smaller game devs use it. Even though Unreal has tried to set up their monetary system to better entice these smaller devs to use Unreal. I believe I looked it up, and as of this last survey, about 25% of games of current projects use Unreal, and I believe it's about 13% was Unity, and then it breaks down to proprietary and smaller engines after that. So, even this person is noticing from a publisher point of view that that there's a big switch going on. Oliver, who used to work at Ubisoft Massive, he's more of on the programming side. But from his take, Unreal is a generally good engine that has good tools, and it's used by lots of people, which means that the hiring thing, you see the hiring thing come up in this over and over and over again, which makes sense. And we'll see this again, but the idea is that if you're especially a big AAA dev who needs hundreds of people to work on your game, Ubisoft Massive, for example, has their Snowdrop engine. That's a proprietary engine made by Massive. So if they hire someone to work on The Division, to work on their Avatar game, to work on their Star Wars game, they have to teach them how to use that engine. Where if they were using Unreal Engine 5, most people coming out of school, which is a really common pipeline for devs now, who are people who go to school to be devs, are using Unity and Unreal Engine in school, and so they know how to use the tools. They have a basic understanding of the engine, and it's easier to hire people and train them. It's also easier to get people to want to work for you, because in the say like EA, in their situation, they have a situation where everyone talks about how terrible Frostbite is to work in. And it's going to be hard to hire people onto your teams to work on those engines, because they know how to use Unreal. They don't know how to use Frostbite. They've heard terrible things about it. So if they have two offers from one company who uses Unreal and one company who uses Frostbite, they're probably going to go with Unreal, especially if the pay is within the same range. This user here brings up Nanite. This Nanite technology is supposed to basically be something that makes, I believe, lighting way more intuitive and way more efficient to do. As we go down, this person who talks about it building the Unreal Engine did a good job of marketing, and having a lot of hype from that original engine trailer, which was real funny because they really played it up like it was shown on PS5, I believe, and they kind of tried to portray it like only the PS5 can show this in its true full form, which just wasn't true. It was, Unreal Engine 5 needs to work good on all consoles and platforms for people to want to use it. But then this person clarifies here is that there's more devs available, there's more people using it, so there's more of a information base out there, as well as good tools. This person here, I believe, is one of the people who actually works at Unreal. They work on the engine themselves, but again, we see this theme again. Easier to hire for than a proprietary or in-house engine, better tooling, newest features, so like ray tracing and things like that. And this is a big one too. This huge community and knowledge base available is a big thing I've seen as well. I followed up asking about the MetaHuman thing, that is that kind of like a gimmick feature, or is it something that really seems like it will draw developers to their thing? And they kind of respond, yeah, I mean, the tech definitely helps, but obviously not all, right? So it is maybe a little bit of a gimmick, but if you can use it, it's extremely useful. And then again, we see the same thing. This was the former BioWare co-founder, Trent Oster. So it's leveraging research and development from many other studios. That's kind of that base I was talking about. Less effort to update the engine because you're not doing it yourself, and ease of hiring. We're seeing this theme over and over again, that it's easy to hire for, it's easy to use, it's good, and so it all kind of makes sense. And you know, as we go through this, you're seeing the same thing. The go-to when creating smaller AAA teams, working on games in new genres. Um, this is another point: is the proprietary engines tend to be a lot more focused. Like, so you'll see a lot of proprietary engines are made for one type of game or for one specific game. So in the case of Frostbite at EA, now they've forced that engine to be used for their sports games, their third person games, their first person games, for everything, their racing games, I believe. But Frostbite was built to be a Battlefield engine. It was, and it does that very well, and it still does to this day. But you've seen the growing pains when they tried to expand that with like Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem. Even the early iterations of the sports games had a lot of issues. And there's been kind of this common thread that like the Frostbite engine is extremely powerful. It's just not very feature rich, and it's not very easy to use, but you can do a bunch of good stuff with it. So it's kind of that conundrum. And again, I mean, you know, I really appreciate all these people responding. It was really, really helpful. But you see basically the same thing over and over and over again, is that like this person's along the lines of, you know, whatever tool gets you the final product as cheap as possible and as quick as possible. So, you know, while, you know, a developer can build their own engine, it's typically not going to be cheaper or more efficient to do that. Now, this is where there does have to be a quick discussion. I don't want this video to be too much longer, but there has to be at least a short discussion about how, especially AAA games, the bigger the game is and the more access to the guts of Unreal a developer needs, the more expensive it is for them to use the engine. So Epic will, if you use their vanilla engine and you don't need to dig into their code at all, you're just going to use their vanilla tools, and you're a smaller game or indie dev or whatever, you can almost use Unreal for free. You'll also get bonus points or a bonus discount if you make your game available on Epic Store, and I think even more so if you make it exclusive to Epic Store. But the cost thing does matter, because there can be a point, and this is what's going on with like Frostbite at EA, with Snowdrop at Ubisoft, is, you know, it is really expensive to have all your own engineers and do all your own programming and make your own engine. But if you use it enough, and you eventually can justify that cost, but it doesn't always work, because, you know, the engine isn't always easy enough to use. And this is what we've seen with Frostbite at EA, is that, you know, they at this point, they've probably, you know, made money from using their own engine, but at the failing of a bunch of games that suffered because they had to use that engine. Where if they would have used Unreal, maybe they would have had to pay a lot more money for the engine up front, but maybe they would have been better games, and they would have come out faster, and they would have been easier to make, and therefore maybe it would have paid off in the long run for them to have used like Unreal Engine or something like that. So I don't really think I'm going to get any more unique answers here. I believe most of these were about the same. And then a handful of devs that I know pretty well personally, I kind of reached out that work at like Ubisoft, Rockstar, and a few other places. And I kind of asked the same question, because well, both of those companies use a proprietary engine. And it seems like Ubisoft is even going to the point of they've had Anvil next, and Snowdrop, and I think there was one more engine that Ubisoft uses, and I believe more recent reports have said that games like the next Splinter Cell game and things like that will be using Snowdrop. And so it seems like Ubisoft either hasn't learned EA's lessons from Frostbite, or they're just supremely confident in their product, and that they can do well with Snowdrop and do better than what EA could do with Frostbite. We'll have to wait and see about that. I am skeptical, but I also know that from my experience with the Division franchise, that Snowdrop is a very powerful engine, and seems like it is more easily made to work with other genres, because it it was designed, it seems like, to be a more general engine where Frostbite wasn't. So I don't know. I know I rambled a bit, but I still think this is good info. I think it's interesting to think about. I really think that this generation is going to be very Unreal 5 heavy. A few conversations I have did kind of hint to that many of these devs, including like EA and CDPR and stuff like that, may switch to Unreal 5 because it's just better than what they have. But in the meantime, they will be working on the next generation of their own proprietary engines. So this may be like a one generation thing with Unreal, where they only use it for maybe 5 to 10 years, and then we'll see them all develop their own technology in that time, probably learning lessons from Unreal, and then putting out their own proprietary engines again, one, to save money, and two, to have control over it. So I think this will be an interesting thing to follow as the years go by. I like this kind of stuff, and I hope you do too. So down in the comments, let me know what you think. Please subscribe to the channel and like this video. I'm curious to what you all thought of this video, what you think of this kind of push towards making Unreal Engine even more dominant. And I will be looking out for those comments from you. You can follow me on Twitter at Bondiesel, as well as most other social media places. You can catch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Bondiesel, and over in here on YouTube. So where I have a bunch of other videos, and my podcast, The Echo Cast, which you can also find on all podcast platforms. That's all I have for this one. Until next time.